Madam Chair, I'm starting your recording right now. Just a moment. Yes, looks like you're recording.
Great, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and get started. I now call to order this work session of the Anchorage Assembly regarding the confirmation hearing for Cheryl Frasca, Office of Management and Budget Director. It is Friday, January 28, 2022. We are noticed from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Constand.
Here.
Ms. Allard.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Perez Verde.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Ms. Quinn Davidson. Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton. Ms. Zellatel.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beneklausen. I want to note that documents for this work session are available at muni.org. You click on Assembly and at the top click on Assembly Work Sessions. You will find them there. I also want to note that Ms. Frasca's confirmation will be before the body at the Tuesday, February 1 regular Assembly meeting as agenda item 10D3. Before we begin this hearing, I want to call attention to Charter Section 5.02, Powers of the Mayor, which states, quote, "The mayor shall appoint all heads of municipal departments subject to confirmation by the Assembly on the basis of professional qualifications," end quote. Members are urged to keep in mind that we need to be careful concerning the reputation of the nominee. Questions should be limited to education and work experience. Please be aware of any sensitive personnel issues that may not be legally permissible for discussion in a public forum. If members have relevant questions concerning personal characteristics or habits of the nominee that they believe are germane to the question of the nominee's professional qualifications, we can consult with legal counsel to consider holding a special meeting and executive session on a later date or offering the nominee the option to request a public discussion here instead of in executive session. So I will now turn to Mr. Shabaka, Director of Human Resources, to briefly introduce Ms. Frasca. Mr. Shabaka.
Thank you, Chair LaFrance. Nikki Shabaka, Chief Human Resources Officer. It's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Bronson's nominee to serve as Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Cheryl Frasca. Cheryl has lived here in Alaska since 1977 and brings with her over 4 decades of budget-related experience and expertise in both the public and private sectors. Cheryl spent the first 13 years of her career as a legislative staffer, primarily to chairs and co-chairs of the House and Senate Finance Committees. During that period, she worked for both rural and urban legislators, Democrats and Republicans. And notwithstanding her duty assignments to Juneau, though, Anchorage has always been Cheryl's home. In 1990, Cheryl took her invaluable legislative experience and transitioned to work for the state of Alaska's executive branch when she was hired to work for Governor Hickel's Office of Management and Budget. In 2002, then Governor Murkowski appointed her to serve as OMB director. Cheryl also brought her state level legislative and executive leadership experience to local government, where she was appointed OMB director by Mayors George Wirch and Dan Sullivan. So she has plenty of experience with this position already. In addition to her public sector experience, Cheryl also has worked in the private sector. Throughout her career, she's been a consultant primarily on state fiscal issues, and she also currently owns a travel-related business. Cheryl has a master's degree in public administration from University of Alaska Southeast and a BA in political science. Her work has been recognized by the National Governors Association for distinguished service to state government, and she's received the Alaska Municipal League's Community Award of Excellence for the Mayor's Education Summit and the Tax Savers Program. Her work in the Anchorage community includes recognition by the YWCA as a Woman of Achievement and the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce Awards award of a Gold Pan for outstanding chamber service by a member. Cheryl currently serves on the board of directors of Commonwealth North and co-chairs its fiscal policy study group as well. So it's truly an honor to introduce an Alaskan who has done so much in service of her state and her city, and whom I quickly have grown to respect for her candor, wisdom, and expertise. So on behalf of Mayor Bronson, we ask that you confirm Ms. Cheryl Frasca as our municipality's next OMB director. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chewbacca. Ms. Frasca, before I go to questions from members, and let me note for the record that we were joined by Ms. Davidson at 1:03. Would you like to add anything else?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I actually had written out a whole lot of stuff, and it was really about OMB and my view of the role that OMB can play more on the M side, the management side, versus the typical interaction that the Assembly and the departments have in dealing with budgets. And so I was going to walk you down my memory lane of working in various capacities on performance measurement and accountability and focusing on results. But frankly, I'll just spare those gory details from you, unless, of course, you want to hear them. So I really would welcome just questions and a conversation with the Assembly members, because frankly, I've had the opportunity to work with several of you over the years, but there's some of you who I've not worked with. And so with that, I'd welcome just a chat.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ms. Frasca. The first member in the queue is Mr. Constand.
Hi there, Cheryl. So we started the conversation reading the charter section that said if we need to go into executive session to talk about potential personality or issues that might be reputationally harmful, we could. And the only thing I would say is it might be harmful to your reputation for people to know that you were well retired, running a meeting and champagne and travel business and living the good life. And a sane person would ask the question, why in the world would you do this to yourself? And but from where I sit, I'm really grateful that you're here. And so it's by way of that round argument, I would say that this was a superb choice, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And I'm glad you're not making me answer the question of why am I doing this? So
That's a better over beverage.
But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constand. Mr. Perez Verde.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Cheryl. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
I don't think you have to go through your whole long list of things, but I would like you to share a little bit about your vision for this office and, you know, what some things that we can expect from you over the next year to 2 years. And in particular, you know, you're walking into a really challenging time, as you can imagine, in terms of just this administration and this assembly trying to find ways to work together. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that in terms of how you are going to approach stepping into a challenging time and how you plan on trying to bridge some of that division. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Perez Verde. Well, first I'm doing, my fact gathering, catching up on the information in terms of where we are and I appreciate what you've all gone through for the last couple of years in terms of COVID and the spending and all the challenges that the city has faced. But what I hope to do over the next, while I'm here again, is to work on, communicating what's the value for the dollars being spent. Too often, just like with OMB, you focus on the B part, the budget part. What are the numbers? It's all about a spreadsheet. But instead, I think we also have to start looking at what are the results being delivered for the dollars being spent. Are we effective at the services? Are we achieving the intended outcomes that a program was set up to achieve? For example, with the fire department, it's easy to not pick on them, but use them as an example, because they will report their response time. which is great and it's important. But if every piece of property burned to the ground, but they got there quickly, you probably wouldn't think that they were very effective. EMTs, they also talk about their response time. But if 90% of the cardiac arrest calls did not survive, but they got there quick, you probably wouldn't think that they were effective. So we need to go and look at what are the results being achieved with the dollars being spent. And so I've worked on this initiative, frankly, since Governor Hickel days, and in various ways. And I've worked from the legislative staffer's point of view, frankly, as well as from the executive branch. And my interest is in rejuvenating the performance value results frameworks that the city has and using them in evaluating current spending. And so that's a partnership I would like to have with the Assembly as we look at those. And it may be a way that we can find some savings, perhaps, but still deliver good results, and then reprogram those dollars to new priorities. So it's not rocket science, but it's something that takes time to sit down and understand and go through the data. So that's an approach that I really feel passionate about, frankly, that needs to be integrated into the work that OMB does and its work with the departments.
Thank you, Cheryl. I really appreciate that answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Perez Verde, and thank you, Ms. Frasca. I want to note for the record that we were joined by Mr. Weddleton at 1:10. Ms. Zellatel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Ms. Frasca. Keeping on that thread of quality of services and performance measures, how can OMB support professional development in various departments to write contracts and grants that emphasize performance measures based on subject matter expertise? If we look back, the health department is an example where there used to be subject matter experts that would be involved in the writing of requests for proposals or grants and contracts. And that expertise over the course of years has left either through attrition or for whatever reason. So if we want these performance measures, and we want folks who we're contracting with or providing grants to report back performance measures, how do we make sure we have the professional development within the departments to translate those performance measures into contractual terms or grant terms to make sure we're getting what we want?
Well, I thank you, Ms. Zellatel. I'm not viewing the performance measures as a process by which we get grants, and I'd be glad to talk with you further about how you view this. Because if you look in our budget book, OMB, the city's budget book, there already are performance measures in there, and there's data being collected, which is reporting to the Assembly on a quarterly basis. Oh, one of the things I did want to say as part of my opening remarks, which I did not use, was that one of my career highlights was in 2013 when I was an appointed member of the Anchorage Assembly, and the Assembly approved an ordinance to require that the performance measures be reported to the Assembly on a quarterly basis. And it was it was an illustrious 3-month term where I was then soundly defeated by Tim Steele at the polls. So I just thought I'd share that highlight. So I have some empathy with you, sort of. But the departments currently are doing performance measures. That's not to say they don't need some work, and we will be doing that with them. So it's not intended to be onerous or overly burdensome on what they're doing. We just want to make them meaningful measures that the public cares about. And but I'd be glad to talk about what your concerns are and what your observations have been over time as you've seen this evolve.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up question, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Zellatel.
Thanks. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So then when you say performance measures, you mean the more general performance measures and not specific to any particular funding source or function of the funding?
Correct. It's about this, it's about the public dollars being spent to deliver services, irrespective of the source.
Thank you.
Could folks make sure they're muted, please? Thank you. Ms. Zellatel, any follow-up?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Zellatel. Thank you, Ms. Frasca. I have two members in the queue. I'll go first to Ms. Allard and then to Mr. Constand. Ms. Allard?
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for being here. I'm sure you already know how I feel about you. So I'm going to ask a broad question. What is your number one goal? I know I might have stumped you, Cheryl.
Well, I don't know that I have a goal. I mean, you know, to meet the responsibilities of the mayor in terms of the budget and the requirements we have. We follow the code and the charter, and it's to support the work of the city. You know, I don't have a goal personally, other than to help integrate, I should say, the integration of performance measures into decision making is a goal, but really it's to help the city make good decisions with the limited resources it's going to have, and balancing those. And in my perfect world, we'd do a good job of communicating the choices and trade-offs to citizens.
That's a perfect answer. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Thank you, Ms. Frasca. Mr. Constand?
Thank you. Cheryl, question. So you referenced the performance measures, and I think the last couple of quarters that those performance measures have come forward, in some ways they've turned meaningless, right? It's like a bunch of work a bunch of people do, and then they go into a flat document with a bunch of little links you could click on. And I, as a member, have no way of entering and grasping the meaning of all of that and how to approach it and how to meaningfully use that information in policymaking. And so there have been a couple of quarters now of conversation of possibly eliminating that requirement or completely remaking that requirement. And so I just want to put on your table that that's literally where that project has come, because we have no entree into utilization of the records, whether it's meaningful or useful or meaningless, or, you know, just make work, causing departments to have to do additional labor while they should be doing other things. And so that really, I don't know that there's a question there, but there's a project there to either bring forward to us a methodology for understanding and utilizing those, or helping us to revise them in a way that is meaningful to today.
Yeah, through the chair, Mr. Constand, I appreciate those comments. In fact, one of the first days I was here, I got an internal audit that was done on the PBR frameworks at the request of an assembly member. So I got some insights into the concerns, but I'd welcome an opportunity to talk with assembly members about how that information might be more meaningful. And we've got a lot of work to do with the departments on simplifying it, so that it's not too burdensome. My goal is to make it so that the reporting information that's important to citizens. And so it's not a lot of bureaucraties, and it's not into the minutia, but what do citizens care about? You know, how long does it take to plow the snow? You know, I think street maintenance is doing a pretty good job with their map. You know, you can see where that is. So it doesn't have to be a lot of measures, but they got to be meaningful, and then they will help you as a decision maker. You know, because you know, when I was a staffer, I always heard about how a department would, if only you gave us, you know, another $100,000, you know, we could achieve world peace. And then you gave them the $100,000, and gosh, nobody went back to see if world peace, that's a bad example, but if world peace was achieved. And so then it would be next year, 200,000. So you never talked about what were the results with the additional dollars, or what are the results with the dollars you're already spending. And so that's where we gotta, you know, get the discussion down to what makes sense to not only you as a decision maker, but also to citizens, so that they see that they've got a good return on their taxes being paid. So yes, it's a work. It's going to take some sitting down and working through all the data that's already there, and seeing can be better data, better information. So I appreciate your comments, really do.
Yeah, because it's turned into something that's just noise and not signal.
Yep,
Thank
yep.
you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Thank you, Ms. Frasca. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Cheryl. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
We've talked a little bit, but we didn't really get a chance yet to talk about some of the things that I thought might be interesting. And that is, first of all, I do agree with Mr. Constant. I've brought up the measurement reports many times because a lot of times they're not even filled in. A lot of times we don't actually even have the information when it comes up on the agenda. There's missing pieces to that. So that's been some of my frustration as well in terms of how we make that meaningful, because I do believe it's probably a lot of work for a lot of departments. But my real question though is, as you've come back and kind of, you've been here before, now you're back. What kind of differences have you seen in how things work now versus how they worked then? Were there any real things that you were surprised about, or things that maybe had to reconsider how things are being done, or how you would rather see them done? So was there anything like that just kind of struck you when you came back? Thanks.
Oh, no, actually, the one nice thing is about actually coming to OMB is because, I've worked with the staff here before, and so it's great to return to a good team. And in terms, certainly you all know how the Assembly's role has evolved. So that's different. And in terms of the relationship between the executive and the legislative branches. And so, but we got to work with it and figure out how we can provide good information in order to make good decisions. And so I haven't, other than, there's not as many people in this building as there were before. And we use Teams now instead of actually seeing people, sitting down with them. But nothing monumental, frankly. But the challenge, in terms of the revenues available to support the desired goals, that's going to be a challenge. But frankly, that's usually a challenge. So, but again, gathering the information so that you and the mayor can make informed decisions, and that's not any different than it was before.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you, Ms. Frasca. Are there any other members who have questions? I'm not seeing anyone else in the queue, but I will just pause a moment. Okay. Ms. Quinn-Davidson?
Sorry, I didn't text you. I think I've gotten out of the habit. I just came from the reapportionment committee. I just wanted to say welcome to Ms. Frasca. I've never had the chance to work with you, but heard really stellar reviews, and think we're really lucky to have you in this position, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn-Davidson. I'm one of your constituents, by the way.
Nice. Go Anchorage. Chris told me this morning that we're renaming ourselves the Lakes District, which I think has a ring to it.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn-Davidson. Are there any other members who have a question or comment? Okay, well, thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you, Ms. Frasca. I look forward to working with you as well. And again, to members, Ms. Frasca's confirmation will be on this coming Tuesday's agenda as item 10D3. And with that, I will see most everyone back at the next work session, which starts at 1:30. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.